Satnam and welcome, welcome. What a time to be alive is all I can say. I don't know if you knew, but emotions are the language of our ancestors. And if we're not honoring and processing our emotions, what are we doing to our emotions? We're suppressing them, right? So, what is depression? Depression is suppressed emotions. So, today, on this really powerful pre eclipse week, where I know all of us are feeling these emotions, I want to talk a little bit more about why emotions are the language of our ancestors and how to actually disrupt ancestral karmic intergenerational patterns of abuse by mastering your emotions in 3 easy steps. Satnam, Satnam, and welcome everyone. What a time to be alive. Coming here today, I was really emotional, being that it is eclipse season. And I don't know if you knew, but we are mostly made of water, and there's a big reason why our ancestors always took time for ritual, for meditation, for ceremony during these very powerful eclipses. And that is because during this time we have an opportunity to actually elevate, to disrupt ancestral patterns, to disrupt programming that no longer serves us. Because whether you like it or not, eclipses are very karmic. The energy that is being projected into Mother Earth is very sporadic. They can definitely change your destiny very quickly. But remember, there has to be destruction in order for creation to take place. So whatever is being eclipsed out of your life needs to be eclipsed, because for some reason, maybe you're not seeing with your heart, maybe you're only seeing with the logical mind and the eyes, but this is not serving you. Like, we set out these desires in life, right? We have wishes, we have these desires that we put out into the universe for manifestation. And what we don't realize is that when we do that, the universe conspires and literally moves the frequency so that you can literally align with that you're manifesting. So a lot of the times that looks like things falling apart from your life, destruction. The Tower card in the tarot, the Tower card is where everything seems to be falling apart. But remember, out of chaos there's order. That is literally like the universe's biggest lesson. And eclipses, that's why they can really feel emotional. They can pull on our nervous system, especially because a lot of things are falling apart. And also because this one specifically, like, it's in Scorpio, so we have to look at where this eclipse actually is aligned with what planets, what signs. And then specifically for you, like tomorrow in our membership community, we're hosting a specific meditation class and psychotherapy class for the eclipse. And I'll be going over there what each of the signs are actually working on. Because if you look at your astrological chart, you can see where you sit as it relates to this eclipse in Scorpio, with the north node in Taurus and the south node in Scorpio. And you can see what house. It's actually easy. It sounds complicated, but you can go to like astrology.com, download your free astrological chart, and actually see which house, because there's several houses, and whatever house this eclipse is falling on under your chart, you're going to get major awareness as to what you're working on, what exactly is being eclipsed out of your life. Is it your business? Is it your home? Is it your health? Is it your money? There's different houses that represent it specifically for you, what it is that you're working on. And it is enlightening. It is self-realization. It gives you so much power so that you don't feel so fogged and confused with everything that is happening with the eclipse. Being that it is in Scorpio, we all know that the energy of Scorpio is incredibly transformative. It's like Plutonian energy, right? It's death and rebirth. It's also very revelatory as it relates to truths. So do not be surprised if a lot of truths are coming out right now that can make you feel super uncomfortable, because Scorpio is the king of the shadows. Scorpio's like, let me break this out to you and illuminate it for you, so you could stop living in the fog, so you could stop living in the darkness of why you're stuck, or even what people need to be eclipsed out of your life. Being that this eclipse also sits right next to our friend Venus, who does not like hanging out with Scorpio. And Venus just literally went through this major timeline shift. Like on Saturday, she completed a beautiful 5-year cycle where she makes like this beautiful flower of life in the skies. And she closes out a 5-year cycle in your relationships, in your money, in your self-worth, in your business relationships, but also romantic relationships and the relationship you have with yourself. Now it's sitting right next to Scorpio on this eclipse happening tomorrow. And it recently went through this 5-year cycle closing, but also through a bigger shift, a 250-year change that hasn't occurred for 250 years. She jumped over to align with our friend Libra. Libra is about harmony and balance and bringing harmony and balance to our relationships. But those relationships that are incredibly karmic are not going to make it. So if you are still in the romantic relationship you're in, or in the partnership you're in as it relates to the business, it's probably going to be very long term and it's going to be very successful. So keep at it. Now, if you're going through major splits, if you're getting a divorce, if you separated from someone, if you are ended a relationship in your business, it was karmic. Stop trying to revive it. These people, experiences, cycles in your life, you have to learn to let them go when God is whispering. Because if you wait for God to shout, God is going to do it in a way. Remember, the universe conspires to give you what you want. And you do not want to listen to God on the shout, because God on the shout sometimes looks like dark nights of the soul, like illness, like that divorce without you even knowing it was coming because you were pretending everything was okay, or like just losing your job, or that friend all of a sudden ghosting you. All of these things need to happen for a bigger reason. And if you don't have a stable nervous system, if you don't have emotional intelligence, which is what we're going to talk about today, then you're going to become attached. Scorpio is all about bringing out that jealousy, the codependency, the envy, especially as it relates to your relationship. So all this stuff is going to be coming up for you to not punish yourself or to feel like you're being punished. These are incredible opportunities. If you have the tools, if you're doing the inner work like we are in our community, this is an incredible opportunity to look at these shadows and to become aware of them so that we can change and transmute them. You cannot change what you're not aware of. This is why people are afraid of doing the inner work, why they're afraid of meditation. It's not because they don't have time. It's not because it doesn't work. It's because you have to sit in emotions, which we're going to talk about today. And most of us do not want to feel uncomfortable in emotions, which is why we numb and we run away when we don't realize that that is literally the pathway to our healing. And that if we don't set up these appointments with ourselves, then we're going to continue on these patterns for a long, long time, lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes. So this is a very important, it's like a crossroads, right? What's the awareness I'm gaining? And you want to do this right now, ladies, because we have another lunar eclipse, November 8th, which is going to fall on election day in the United States of America. And let me tell you, if you think people are insane right now, if you think people are acting out of their consciousness, then that's nothing compared to which we're going to be seeing November 8th. There's a lot of fear mongering in the collective. There's a lot of basically people being distracted from the opportunity of growth, of miracles, of self-healing. And November 8th, being that there's also this big election, there's going to be an upward momentous energy that's going to definitely impact us if we ourselves don't know who we are, if we're still putting our worth on something outside of us, a position, a role, a person, a relationship, if we are still operating under the old ways of the Piscean age, which is competition, right? Stabbing in the back, all that stuff is going to come out to the light, and it's being destroyed. Why? Because the United States of America is going through its Pluto return. I've talked about this many times. This is a cycle that only happens every 248 years. So it doesn't happen to someone like you and I because we don't usually live to be 248 years. But countries have an astrological chart. Businesses have their own astrological chart. And in 1776, the United States of America was birthed. 248 years later, we have Pluto that comes around every 248 years and destroys Think of it as when Pluto had its return for the Roman Empire. Nothing was the same about the Roman Empire. They completely became destroyed. So you're having all of these energies of cycles closing out. Venus, 250-year cycle. Pluto return with the United States of America, where nothing's going to be the same. Economy is going to be completely changed. Money, the way we govern ourselves, the government, everything will be completely unrecognizable. Mark my words. Yet once again, by March 2023, this is inevitable. You cannot stop what is happening. Not even fear. It's like the movie Avatar, like they're trying to stop the light and the cohesiveness and the co-partnership with Mother Earth. And yet you see what happens at the end. Mother Earth is so powerful. God is so powerful. And that's one thing that I heard one of my astrologers, my favorite astrologers, actually say. She said that what we don't realize here in the 3D is that we already won this battle. We already won this world war in the ethers. We already won this war in the spiritual realm. Christ consciousness has already been birthed. It has been born within all of us. Yet the people here in the 3D in their physical bodies that don't know that they are an infinite self having this experience, they're suffering tremendously, and they're feeling the repercussions of the darkness. They're feeling the basically their inability to mirror and to see that what's in here is actually out there. That's going to be your biggest miserable mistake, because if you continue to do that and not honor your shadows and not become aware of them, you're going to be creating a reality that's filled with a lot of fear, that's filled with a lot of basically lack of sovereignty, and that is going to basically put you in a state of anxiety, depression, or in a way where you feel like you're alone, or that this world is supposed to be some scary place when it absolutely is not. Not everybody is participating in the fear mongering. Not everybody is a sheep being herded into the insanity of what control looks like today. And a big part of that is those that are going within, those that are taking self-responsibility. What we're doing is we're activating the most powerful technology that can ever be activated, which is your heart. There is nothing. There's no iPhone, no computer. There is not even your brain is more powerful than your heart coherence, which means we got to do some major healing. We got to stop bypassing our own patterns, and we got to stop tucking things under the rug, pretending that if I just keep taking action, something will happen in my life. And that's why this eclipse feels so heavy, because it's like a crossroads. Either you continue with your karmic programming and on that old way of thinking, or you're going to surrender with humility and ask for guidance, right? That's one of the beautiful things my sister was telling me today. She was saying how in her particular astrology, she's being asked to get clear on her desires. And I was like, check in with that, because you want to make sure sometimes when we don't have clarity on our desires, it's because we don't feel worthy, and we don't want to feel let down, because then if we do desire something and it doesn't manifest, then I'd rather not even desire it, because I'm just not worthy. But she really, really surprised me with her answer. It was so beautiful. And what she said was that she's more in a state of consciousness where she's in this, not that she needs desires anymore. It's more like she's asking for guidance, like the things like the cars and the houses, and no one's saying to be poor. It's not that they don't necessarily excite her. It's just that she's gone beyond that. And she's now seeking for the guidance of God to help her in what she needs to co-create. And wow, to me, that was just so beautiful and so meaningful, because that living in that manner is sovereignty. To be able to say, instead of every morning, I have a prayer that I say in my sadhana to help me with this, because being a very masculine driven, used to be very masculine, logical minded driven woman, it was all about action. It was all about manifestation. It was all about what Veronica wanted, right? And never about what should I do, God, right? And so I've trained myself to get out of that rat race too. I've trained myself to basically ask even what miracles I'm to perform. And one of my favorite prayers is from A Course in Miracles, which I invite you all to pray and to say this to yourself every single day, so that you yourself, instead of trying to control the world and trying to control what happens in your life, because we all know what happens when we try to control. God's like, let me show you how you're not in control. That's why I'm here, right here, ladies. then the most important prayer that I do every single day, we do this in sadhana and our daily meditation practice inside of my community. And this is from A Course in Miracles. And what I always pray is, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say? And to whom? Where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say? And to whom? Where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say? And to whom? So I highly, highly invite you to practice that prayer today. Yes, you might know what your desires are. You might know what you're wanting to manifest in this eclipse, but really tap in and ask those questions, because if you tap in and ask those questions, you're going to open up to a aspect of creativity within you that you probably have never tapped into. You're going to awaken a soul within you that is waiting to be awakened, and you're going to be able to tap into your intuitive hits, so that you're creating from a place of heart and not from a place of competition, from the logical mind, from basically, I need approval from the world, or I need someone to say I'm amazing. Because you know that is inevitably your demise. That is inevitably what's going to take us into a nervous breakdown or some kind of illness, which inevitably will teach us even more lessons, right? So what a beautiful lesson that she shared with me today, this morning, as I was helping her and feel worthy. She was the one that really turned it around on me. And I was like, wow, sis, you're really, really ahead of the game here. So practice that and see how it feels for you, because this eclipse is here to bring a lot of truths. And I promise you, they're going to be pretty obvious, really, really obvious. And what you can do is also join me on Wednesday. I'll be live on YouTube, Wednesday, 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. We're going to be doing this, practicing a specific meditation to help you with emotional intelligence during this eclipse season. So join me then and sign up for my newsletter too, because today I'm releasing that meditation and it's all nicely written in this beautiful newsletter that I send out every week on Mondays. So you have all of these tools, ladies. You want to have like a nice tool belt with all the things that you can use to help you during these very, very fast changing times. You can click on the link in my bio to sign up for my newsletter, or go to veronicabarraganiam.com/disruptor. And you can download it there and sign up for it. All right. So let's talk about emotional intelligence today, because I figured, emotional intelligence is going to be very much needed during such a high impact time, and especially with this eclipse coming in tomorrow. And one of the things that I repeat all the time, and I think a lot of people don't understand, is that emotions are the language of our ancestors. Like literally, like every time you're feeling an emotion, your ancestors are speaking to you. And that's one thing that we really, especially in the West or in modern society, like we don't really honor our ancestors. And next week I'm going to be in the most beautiful place to honor my ancestors during Dia de los Muertos and during Halloween time, which I don't celebrate Halloween anymore at all, but I do celebrate, of course, Dia de los Muertos, and I celebrate my ancestors every day. It's not just on El Dia de los Muertos. The veil for me is always thin. It doesn't get thinner in Halloween. It's always thin. They're always here. They're always communicating with me. And next week when I'm in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, which is where they celebrate El Dia de los Muertos in a very beautiful way, because in Mexico, El Dia de los Muertos is like as important as Christmas. It's that powerful. And the rituals and the ceremonies that they do over there are absolutely like beautiful. This has been a lifelong dream for me, ladies. And for it to manifest this year, when my abuelita passed away just a few months ago, is the biggest blessing in my life. Like I can't tell you how grateful I am. So next week, and when I'm actually there in Mexico, I'll be going live at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time on Monday, and then on Wednesday, so I can share with you more about communication, how they speak to us, how they speak to us in dreams as well. We'll talk about that there more. But just as an overview, understand that your emotions are actually a way that they're communicating with you, which is why a lot of the times we feel uncomfortable, right? Like these emotions, especially if you have like a lineage where, they went through serious trauma, like we talked about like last week. We talked about how immigrants have a much more heavier impact as it relates to trauma because of colonization, or how they were felt like less than because of the color of their skin and all that stuff, right? All those things have an impact on how we operate and experience life even 5, 6 generations later. So go catch that video to learn more about that. But in essence, what we need to understand and really learn to honor our emotions and realize that, yes, if they're heavy, it has to do with something of a kernel of the memory of the past, right? But we can learn to transcend them and learn to go beyond them here in the present, right? That's what it's all about. We're a society, unfortunately, that has been told that emotions are bad, which is one of the ways we have to learn to overcome, right? And we'll get deeper into that, but understanding that and there is no good or bad emotion, that in essence, emotions are signals, and they're just signals telling you not who you are, but where you're at in this moment in time and space. And that's the difference. That's where we get caught up in the shame or the guilt, or we want to run away from the emotion. We want to numb it with food, with alcohol, with toxic relationships, with shopping, right? Why? Because we think we have a nervous system and civilization that basically makes us think that we are the emotion, that we are the shame, that we are the guilt, that we are the fear, when it's nothing even close to that. So how do we actually become more emotionally intelligent? How do we learn to work with these emotions so that they don't work us, right? In essence. So the first step that we have to learn to do is what I call the only way to heal, which is to feel, right? It is said that the only way to heal is to feel what you're feeling, right? And so a very important aspect of that is realizing that we don't have a disease. You know, we get diagnosed with ADHD, ADD, we get diagnosed with all of these different crazy, mental health instabilities. It all comes down to a nervous system problem. Like if we were to address the nervous system, and I'm not talking about a pill, because, 70% of the United States population is on some kind of pharmaceutical. Can you imagine when you're given a pharmaceutical, how are you feeling the pain? Like you're numbing the pain, right? So how is that fixing your situation? It's not, because it didn't get to the root cause, which is your emotions, right? And your emotions then create other instabilities, right? Like you can't focus, right? It's not because there's something wrong with you, it's just that you're processing a lot of energy, right? Like your emotions have taken over. And if you come from a lineage of immigrants, of indigenous people that have been colonized and traumatized, I can assure you that these emotions and traumas that you've been through have probably been tucked under the rug. You probably haven't had space to express them. And I'm not talking about going back and remembering them, because in the work that I teach and I do, we don't go back to remember the memories. That's not even necessary. The technology knows where in your frequency, the flow of energy is not functioning, it's not flowing, and it knows exactly what to rewire. It is very dangerous to go back to memories. Like it doesn't even serve a purpose. Like it's not even necessary. If it happens, great. Like, yes, there have been memories that have come up because the memories live in our bodies, right? But the more that I've trained myself to, when I'm feeling that memory, to come back to my body, what happens is that the memory is released from the body, and then it turns into wisdom, right? It's no longer a trigger. It turns into wisdom because you actually sat with it. And the reason why we can't sit with our emotions is because of our nervous systems. A couple of reasons why our nervous systems are shattered. Well, like I said, if you have not done the therapy work, if your ancestors didn't get the therapy work, if you didn't get the therapy work, if your parents didn't get the therapy work, just because you don't know what happened to them, or just because no one wants to talk about the trauma or the abuse, or just because you're pretending like it didn't happen, doesn't mean it didn't shatter your nervous system. It doesn't mean, like I said, that you're not using up energy in the subconscious mind, which we're going to talk about next, right? Your subconscious mind is operating 95% on autopilot. So you're only conscious 5% of the day. So you're not even aware that deep within the subconscious, you're still processing that trauma from when you were 5 years old, or you're still processing the trauma from the womb, when you were in your mother's womb and your mom was going through major abuse, or she was going through a traumatic experience like the death of her mom or sister or whatever was going on in her life. So our nervous systems get shattered through the trauma, through not dealing and processing with our emotions. But also, come on, let's be real. We live in 2022. We are consuming information all day on our devices. And if we are only taking in information and there's no, and it's like a computer, right? And you're not actually processing and releasing that information, then that computer is going to get completely clogged up and it's going to basically crash. And that's what's happening with our nervous systems. We're learning, we're taking in all this info, but we don't have any practices to help us bring oxygen to the brain, bring oxygen to the different chakra centers, which we're going to go deeper into as we move into the podcast next week. That move into like actually understanding that we're all energy and that our emotions are taking a toll on that energy field. And that's why we feel tired. And that's also why we can't make decisions very quickly, because our nervous systems are pretty much wrecked. So it starts with dealing with our nervous system and understanding that that's directly correlated with the simplicity of feeling what we feel. And it's having an appointment with yourself, not when you feel like it, every single day. That's what sadhana is. That's what meditation is. This is why accountability and community is so much needed, because there are days when your ego and your identity is going to tell you, oh, you don't need that meditation. You're fine. You don't need to do that inner work today. You're fine. How many times is the ego going to convince you from overcoming those traumas, from healing yourself? All the time, every single time. So you constantly have to come back where you know you have an appointment with yourself, where your inner child can start trusting you because you've abandoned her so many times because of the trauma, where you say, there is no if and or buts. This is what I'm doing today to process the emotions that I'm working through, because every day we have a new set of emotions, right? It's not that I don't have any emotions anymore. It's not that I don't lose my cool. In fact, I just shared a story yesterday or this morning in sadhana with my community. Yesterday morning, I had the most blissful, heart-opening experience with God. I was done with sadhana. I went to my backyard. I sat in the sun. There are so many miracles happening in my community with the women that I'm coaching in the academy. I mean, I'm talking about life-changing miracles, like healing. Like one of my clients was sharing with me how she's been working with me. She healed herself. Her son, who hasn't walked for 22 years, started walking. Okay. Like just amazing what happens when women heal, how their lineage heals so quickly. Like, and it's not just that, like every day I'm getting DMs and messages from people that are making quantum leaps with the healing work that we're doing in the academy. In my own life, it has been incredibly beautiful. The karma that I'm harvesting right now is karma from all of the seeds of love that I've planted. I have forgiven self. I have forgiven where people usually don't forgive. Why? Because my nervous system is stable, right? And I can go beyond the eyes and I can understand through wisdom, right? So I was in complete bliss, complete gratitude. I mean, I had the most beautiful experience with God in the morning. And then I went to my parents' house for brunch. My dad was completely unconscious. He was in his full pain body. My dad is my best friend. I never get in arguments with him. I love that guy. I completely went off on him. I completely just yelled at him. I told him he was being a victim. I told him, why is he never grateful? I was so frustrated. I could not hold space for him. And I had just gone through that really beautiful experience in the morning. So it's not that I don't feel those emotions. It's just that I don't stay in them very long. So we interacted. My dad literally walked away from the situation because I was in such irate anger. And I don't even know how I got there that quickly. We went our ways. I went to the back. I did my own tools, my technique to my backyard, my dad's backyard. I held my hand in my heart. I felt the feelings of anger, of guilt, of shame, felt what I was feeling, cried, got up, went back, and I told him, I'm so sorry, Dad. I should have held space with you. I'm just trying to help you. And I know that is not what you needed. That what you needed was to be heard. Hugged him, hugged the guy, we cried, It happens, but you see how I don't stay in it very long? I mean, it's instantaneous. It's almost like I fucked up, Dad. I should have held space for you, even though I know everything you said was wrong. And I know that you're coming out of a place of fear and anger, and I know you need help. I still shouldn't have yelled at you. I still should have held space for you. So I went back, I apologized, I held them, and we're good, right? And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about why I was reacting that way, what I needed to learn. So, of course, this eclipse is taking a toll on all of us. But see, an old Veronica not only would have continued to yell, but probably wouldn't have talked to her dad for weeks, months, maybe, right? Taking it personal, not seeing where I could have grown. So it's not that I don't have these emotions anymore. It's just I don't stay in them very long. And I definitely am not a victim, or I definitely am very self-aware of where I'm projecting them out into other people, which is a daily process. It's a daily process in forgiveness of self. It's a daily process of forgiveness of others. And it's a really, when you learn to have compassion for yourself and have grace for yourself, you also let go of these crazy expectations you have with other people as well. So we're not talking about eliminating emotion so that you never feel anger again. The problem is that most of us have not given ourselves the time and space to feel that anger. We've been told, tuck it under the rug, pretend it's like there, don't cry, don't be weak. There's nothing wrong with emotions. They're a pointer in a moment in space and time. You are not the emotion. And the more that you stabilize your nervous system, the more you'll be able to actually realize this. And how do we stabilize our nervous system? It's through the inner work of meditation, breathing techniques, specific mantra you're reciting, getting enough chi and oxygen so that you're secreting the good chemicals instead of the cortisol, which is what we're all addicted to, which is the stress hormone. So number two aspect of how to become more emotionally intelligent takes us into the mind. Now, of course, A Miracle says that healing only happens at the level of the mind, and that is 1,000%. The mind, in essence, is so powerful, like we talked about with the subconscious, right? It's operating 90 to 95% of your day. And all illness, mental, physical, spiritual, it begins with an emotion, with a suppressed emotion. That's what depression is, right? And so the second aspect about healing the mind is learning how to train it, just the way Jesus Christ did, just the way Buddha did. In Kundalini yoga, we know there are three aspects of the mind. There is the positive mind, the neutral mind, and the negative mind. Nothing is good or bad. We have three aspects of the mind to learn to be sovereign beings, just like Jesus Christ and Buddha. They meditated to train their minds. You see, when you and I were born, we were immediately told by parents what was good and what was bad based on their upbringing. They did the best they could, just the way you're doing the best you can with your children. But in this universe, there is no good or bad. There only is how you respond. Sadly, because of trauma, because of lack of inner work and training, because that's what meditation is, we don't govern our minds. Our minds govern us. We're basically slaves to our mind. We are constantly judging what is good, what is bad, never in neutrality, which is what the yogi is. A yogi is not someone who can bend their body in crazy ways, although that happens when you, of course, overcome the mind, right? A yogi is one that can live in neutrality, right? So like Jogi Bhajan would say that if something bad happens to you in your life, that you are very quick to say to yourself, there is nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. You're dealing with the moment in time and space, a challenge, something maybe you need to alchemize and transform, but it has nothing to do with your worth, right? Versus also, if something amazing happens to us, then we say to ourselves, thank God I learned something. Thank God I learned something. Why? Because the ego is also very conniving. The ego likes to identify to roles. I'm a CEO. I'm a spiritual teacher. I'm a mother. And then it likes to attach itself to those roles. And then it suffers tremendously when those roles change. What happens if you're no longer a mother? What happens if you're no longer a wife? What happens if your business is not successful and you're no longer the CEO, or you get fired? then you're going to suffer tremendously. So when we have an unhealed, uncontrolled mind where we're constantly just operating based on our subconscious patterns, we're living from the past, number one. And number two, we're constantly seeking validation, identities to attach to. We become codependent to those identities because we believe that our worth comes from there. And that happens because we were programmed as children, as even past in the womb and with ancestrally, we were programmed and told by society, by church, by your family, right? What is good and what is bad. Sovereignty is having a healed relationship with yourself, doing the inner work of meditation to train it. Like, for example, this month, every single month in my membership community, we work on a specific aspect of the 10 energetic bodies of what you are. You're not just the physical body. So this month, we're working on specific meditations and kriyas that heal, activate the neutral mind. Last month, we worked on the positive mind. The month before that, we worked on the negative mind, so that the women in my community have a system of energy to keep them in cohesive balance for the entire year. This is an energy plan. It's a strategic energy plan. If you don't have an energy plan, I don't care if you have a business plan or a strategic relationship plan. It starts with the energy. It starts with your mindset. It starts with the thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And if you don't deal with that, doesn't matter what kind of strategy you have in the physical realm, right? And so the energy plan and there's specific meditations, right, that help you keep this neutral aspect of your mind healthy and activated. So that is emotional intelligence, right? Emotional intelligence is when somebody in my community tells me, my gosh, my son healed. It's not because of what Veronica did. It's because of what she did. She healed herself. She did the work. And now she's sharing that through her lineage. I'm just the vessel, right? I'm just moving out of my own way, logical mind, and allowing God to work through me to give you this information or to give you this energy to see you as whole and complete. But I can't do that. I can't look at my clients as whole and complete if I don't see myself that way, right? So it always goes from within, changing the subconscious mind and learning how to basically train it. Just like a master, right? Either you are its master or it is your master, period. And going into those hardwired programs of what you were told was good and bad, and learning to trust yourself through the nervous system stabilization so that you can be sovereign and make decisions based on what you want, what your heart desires, based on your guidance, not what society tells you, right? Go get married, go to college, get married, have the kids, get the white picket fence, like all that is like very quickly going out the door, right? Where people are really tapping into these practices so that they can make decisions based on themselves. So you can't, in order for you to have emotional intelligence, you have to train the mind. You have to go in and rewire the subconscious patterns, which takes us back to the work of meditation, chanting specific sound frequencies, and allowing yourself to disrupt the pattern of those sound frequencies that were already created in your subconscious through sound of trauma, of abuse, of I'm not good enough, of depression, of suicide, of sexual abuse. All of this stuff gets basically disrupted by working on healing the mind. And when we heal the mind and we learn how to bring it into neutral status, right, then you are a force to be reckoned with. That is what I call sovereignty. And then the third aspect that we cannot forget, ladies, as it relates to emotional intelligence. So we talked about your nervous system and doing the inner work. And I've done so many more podcast episodes on just the nervous system. So you can go check those out if you want more information on that. We talked about your subconscious mind, right? And changing the program, doing the inner work of meditation, which actually not only changes your subconscious mind, but now we got evidence that it changes your DNA. I mean, that's how deep this work goes. Why? Because it's sound, right? We got to change the sound with another sound. And then the third aspect, and you all know that I'm like a broken record with this, but it is very important. We're talking about your brain. Okay. Same thing with your nervous system, with your brain. Either it's literally breaking apart right now because you're consuming more information than your ancestors were 100 years ago in one day, or you haven't dealt with your trauma. And we already know through science that anybody who's been through trauma, their brain physically deteriorates, right? It changes. Like if we scanned your brain and you've been through trauma versus someone who hasn't, your brain probably looks like incredibly dry and like there's no redness going through it, no blood circulation, it just looks like a 90-year-old brain, right? Versus however old you are. And that's because the structure physically changes. And then what happens when that changes? Well, then we've got some bigger problems because now, since the structure has changed, it's not secreting the chemicals it's supposed to secrete into the body. It's secreting toxic chemicals into the body instead of it secreting the beautiful pineal gland chemicals and the hypothalamus gland chemicals and the pituitary, all those nice chemicals that once they come together, they actually create what is known the cave of Brahma. See, this is what's so beautiful about meditation. When you activate meditation and when you are mastering your mind, and this takes practice, right? And there are some moments where some of my clients come to the academy and they have these moments very early on because they're already tapped into like a higher power. But in essence, when you're in meditation and you're bringing oxygen into the brain, not only are you rewiring the subconscious, which you talked about before, but you have what is known as this beautiful cave of Brahma. And if you look at the brain, it literally looks like a little like indent, like almost like if water was in there, right? Like a little lake. And what happens is that when you're meditating, when you're bringing in oxygen into the brain, when you're bringing in sound frequency into the brain, the chemicals of the brain start to secrete in a very positive way. And specifically the pituitary gland, the pineal gland, and the hippocampus. So those are three very important brain glands. When you go through trauma, they stop working. They always think that's what PTSD is. They think that you're still under that horrible experience, even though you're not. That's why you could be in bed and you could be triggered by something, a memory in your body, and all of a sudden you start sweating, right? You start feeling like you're back in that traumatic experience. Why? Because these chemicals are not secreting correctly. And this is true for ancestral karma too. Like these memories are like things that you can't physically remember here from this lifetime. Like this is stuff from even ages ago, like Holocaust survivors, right? Or all those things we talked about a couple of weeks ago. But if you're doing the inner work, you're bringing vitality to the brain. Like right now, we're doing this really powerful meditation that's known as the intelligence meditation. And what it does is that it was given to children, actually, even in India, to help them like with math and science and stuff like that. But what it does is that it does major repair on the brain, and it allows the brain neurons to start moving faster. So if your neurons are moving faster, you're able to process more information, right? Faster. So that means that you're able to make decisions, emotional intelligence in 9 seconds or less. That's what Yogi Bhajan would always say. Like, we need to make decisions in 9 seconds or less. And if you're not making them in 9 seconds or less, then it probably has to do with the fact that your brain is not functioning correctly. And it's not functioning correctly because of trauma. And it's also not functioning correctly because of all the information that you're consuming, like a computer. So when you start to do the inner work, right, and you start to stabilize the nervous system with breathing, with chanting, right, then what happens is if it starts to secrete correctly, that secretion, those three chemicals are what creates the mystical experience. That's what the mystical experience is. And that's what science is. Science is the demystification of the spiritual realm. That's all it is. And very, very soon, I think in the next 10 to 15 years, I've said this before, the spirit and the science will merge together. Because you cannot have science without spirituality. That's all it is. And so as you start to biophysically secrete these beautiful chemicals from the brain, instead of the nasty ones, they fall into what is known as the cave of Brahma. It creates this moment of present moment awareness where you're no longer your body. You're no longer the identification. You're no longer your traumas. You're no longer your stories, right? And if you can access that even for a second, you can heal instantaneously. I mean, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about people walking all of a sudden. What did I tell you about my client and her son, right? We've had other people in our community who have shared with me how they've used this technique on children that were sick as well. How the child completely, after holding on to energy and just putting a mantra on them, how this child went from irate to calm and being able to take a nap because they're feeling a different frequency in the aura and in the brain and all these different places, right? So it just requires us to actually go within and to introduce these new sounds and these new breathing techniques so that the brain can start secreting these really beautiful chemicals, so you can step outside of the story you've always told yourself, and you can start to identify with your Satnam, which is your truth and identity, right? No identities. You're an infinite self having this really beautiful experience. So a lot of people feel that, or they don't understand that the brain is huge as it relates to emotional intelligence. And the second part of it is like, they don't, well, if we have brains that don't work, well, how do I heal it, right? How do I fix it? There's no, it sounds complicated, right? There's no pill, number one. And number two is you got to go within and you got to make sure you're bringing in oxygen through the work of meditation so that you're able to actually process and able to basically be emotionally intelligent. Because if you don't have those three down, which is your nervous system healed, your subconscious mind patterns rewired, and your brain working in agility, you're not going to be emotionally intelligent. Like, period. You're just not. Okay. You're not going to be able to make decisions very quickly. People are going to tell you have ADD and HDHD, and you're going to believe it. You are going to think something's wrong with you. You're going to think the world is against you. You're going to think that you're basically never going to heal. But it has nothing to do with that. And it's not behavioral. It has to do with the biophysical things that are happening in your body. And it also has to do with the spiritual aspect of what's happening inside of you. So in order for us to truly be emotional intelligent, we have to do the inner work, and we have to deal with these three very important aspects of who we are. Diane says intelligence is one of my faves. Yeah, that meditation. And we practice that meditation. I don't know if you like it, Diane, but I love practicing it with with the mantra that actually heals the mother wound. For some reason, ever since I started practicing that meditation with the mother wound together, like it feels like it speeds up that actual awareness of that particular relationship. And I can tell you, ladies, that I would say a very large part, 9 out of 10 of you, 9 out of 10, if not 10 out of 10, need to do major healing with your mothers in order for you to really, really break some serious ancestral karmic patterns. I can assure you. And I can tell you this because not only did it happen to me, but I can sense, and with the patterns in the woman that I work with, that, and it's nothing to be ashamed of at all. In fact, it's very courageous for you to actually want to do that, because when you get to that, when you bring healing to that, oh my gosh, your relationships heal. And I really believe that because we women have so much more power and so much more ability to truly bring the healing home. Not that men can do it, they totally can, but we just are really built for this, right? Like we are the cosmic mothers for a reason, that when we actually do this work, like the impact is even greater, and you can feel it at a bigger quantum level, like in what happens in the collective. So that meditation is a lifesaver. I practiced that one all of 2020. I remember, because of the Saturn transits that were happening, and it really activates Saturn for us. So this meditation, like I told you, is just all of us are dealing with, at one point or another, a problem or an issue with our brains. Like it doesn't matter who you are, unless you don't have an iPad or an iPhone and you're not consuming the same amount of information. So it doesn't matter if you're a yogi or not, you still need to do the meditations to be able to thrive in this time. Because like one of the things we were talking about too is like, your purpose is not healing. And like a lot of the women in our community, including myself, it's like, we're not really healing anymore. Like this is our practice for expansion of our consciousness, right? We level up. Now we're in conscious relationships, or now we ended that karmic relationship. So now what happens next, right? Like, or we're opening and launching businesses, or we're growing our businesses. So of course, all of our shadows are going to come up, right? All of our limiting beliefs. So this is where the practice becomes even more powerful, because you're able to not go back to those old programs, or basically get stuck in cycles where your ancestors haven't gone beyond that, right? They haven't actually transcended it. Diane says, began fighting it with our mothers and began to forgiving our mothers. Yes, that's so true. Like I agree with you. I began this work definitely in thinking my mother was the enemy, and then learning how to actually forgive her, and then ultimately learning how to forgive myself, which was really, really, really deep. Stop fighting, begin forgiving, right? Very, very important lesson. I think we all hear that, but gosh, to do it is so different. Why? Goes back to the things we're talking about right now. If we were emotionally intelligent, meaning if our nervous system, so we had a daily practice of stabilizing our nervous system, if we've done the work to heal the brain, right, from the trauma, and if we have done the work to rewire our subconscious mind, then we can do all of that. You can forgive. I have forgiven. First of all, I thought I forgave the unforgivable, right, from an outer perspective. When I actually did this work right, and when I finally reached this level of healing that I've never reached, I realized that the only one I had to forgive was myself. And then getting to a point of realization was like, oh my God, I didn't even have to forgive myself. And that's what Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about, like going from memory in the body of PTSD to actually wisdom, right? That's the miracle. It's a shift in perception, and it's not enabling. It's not, you were courageous to sit with this uncomfortable situation experience, to ask a higher power to help you work and discern it. Because, you have two choices when trauma happens to you, and you see this left and right. Either you respond with fear and you hate God and everything that comes with that, or you respond with compassion and ask God to help you understand what is happening. And that's big in the age of Aquarius. Like, where's your relationship with that higher power? Like, if you don't believe in God, like, God is you in your gratitude. God is you when you're in love. God is you when you are in complete faith, right? That's God. So do you have a relationship with that higher power? And when you need help, like the prayer that we did this morning, do you ask? Because if you're not, you're missing out. You're missing out on miracles galore, just like Einstein said, right? It's either life is one big miracle or it isn't, right? But all of this goes back to the emotional intelligence and to the actual doing the inner work to get there. Like, there's no shortcuts. There's no magic pills. There's no, believe me, I've gone everywhere around the world to study different spiritual traditions, worked with plant medicines. I've worked with many psychedelics, many, not just Mother Ayahuasca. I've worked with mushrooms. I've worked with LSD. I've worked with San Pedro. Yes, they were a catalyst in awareness, but nothing has helped me integrate the actual lessons and the wisdom like my Kundalini yoga practice. And that is because I'm actually facing the uncomfortable stuff. Not that you don't do that in plant medicine work, because you do and you can't control it. But when you're actually in your senses, meaning you're not under a psychedelic trance, the work is powerful and the work sticks, because we all know we love to run away from those emotions that are super, super uncomfortable. And yet they become our pathway to our sovereignty, to our liberation, and to our freedom. And I feel you. I mean, this morning, what I would do is I would run to alcohol back in the day, right? Now I'm going to be 4 years sober from alcohol, which is like the biggest accomplishment of my life. I never thought I would even be there. And to not even have triggers, like not even want to go back to alcohol for no reason, I'm grateful every single day. But there's other things that I still would numb myself with. I love to shop. So whenever I felt anxious, right away, go shopping and buy something. Eating, right? And especially eating the low frequency foods. I wouldn't say I have an addiction to it, but I would definitely use it as a crutch, excuse me. And for me, you all know, for a long time, it was cannabis. Cannabis really became my crutch. Good news is that this work doesn't make you feel guilty. So I allowed myself to use the cannabis as medicina, because I really do believe it's medicine as well. It is a very seductive plant, and she is very, very seductive and tells you how it's going to be all okay. But the thing about this work is that it's not that you want to be a goody two shoes, or like you all of a sudden have to be vegan and vegetarian and all this bullshit. It's not that at all. It's just that you do this work and then you start to feel better. Your nervous system starts to feel better. Your brain starts to work. You're not operating under subconscious mind. So then you start to get awareness. And all of a sudden you're like, do I really need that food? Do I really need that cannabis? Do I really need to buy all those dresses? Right. And you start to question and without any guilt. And then all of a sudden you're just like, maybe I don't need that. Maybe I don't. It's not because anyone's making you feel guilty or because your teacher doesn't drink or because your neighbor doesn't drink, or it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with your own awareness and you already feeling better. So then you realize you can't bullshit yourself. So it's like, okay, you have an attachment here. You're codependent. Like, just don't deny it. Like, be bold and accept it. So I did that for a while, right? And then I was like, oh, okay, so this is what it is. So then I need to set boundaries with this plant, because if I don't set boundaries with this plant, apparently it is my go-to place to run away. So that was my process, right? And now I have boundaries with the plant, right? Like, I still use the plant ritualistically, especially like on the weekends. Like if I'm not working with anybody on, I love to be able to I can't meditate afterwards. I will never be able to meditate, especially Kundalini yoga meditation. You can't. It just, you want to be sober and completely grounded when you're doing Kundalini meditation because of the downloads you get. But I do love to still write, get creative and journal and things of that nature. What I know now is that I'm not handicapped to it, right? Or that I'm not attached to it, which again, even that is not something for you to feel guilty or shameful about if you're dealing, because this eclipse is gonna force you to like let that go, whatever that crutch is. If you're working with any other addiction, right? Whether it's a food, a relationship, anything. The step is awareness, acceptance, and surrender. That's it. Notice how there's no guilt, there's no shame, there's no like feeling bad about yourself, because you have to remember, like, if you're not emotionally intelligent right now, or if you have an addiction, or if you are processing a lot of fear, it's not that there's something wrong with you, like not why the addiction, but why the pain, right? So that's what I would ask myself. Why the pain? Why the pain? Why the pain? Why the pain? And then all of a sudden, one day, it was just like, well, you don't have that pain anymore. Like, it's just the habit now. Like, you don't have that pain. So why are you doing this? Right? So that is what gives you lasting results. But that's why your daily practice becomes very important, because you have to cut the bullshit out. You got to be self-aware, right? You got to like face yourself and all the stories you tell yourself to keep going back to that and to the program and to all those things, right? So it's a gradual, beautiful process. I can't say I won't be addicted to something else in the future. I still feel like I'm addicted to shopping, and I'm working on that too. And it's not that one is better or one is worse than the other. It's just awareness, right? Where am I at today? How can I bring myself back home without needing to resort back to those old programs? So yes, it's a beautiful journey in self-realization and self-awareness. I think the most beautiful aspect of it is that you're able to be authentically yourself without any of the shame. That's the most beautiful. And you're able to make decisions from that place, minus what society is telling you is good for you, or your parents are telling you what is good for you. You know it's good for you. If you don't want to listen, that's a whole other problem, right? Jackie says surrender. That's like 90% of the journey, right? We have like this Haas technique, which actually y'all can download. Also, it's a free e-guide that I share with you. It's a daily plan for meditation. And a big part of that is my Haas technique. And the last letter in Haas, HAAS, is for surrender. And that's the thing that we usually don't do. I don't know about you ladies, but it is the hardest thing to do after acceptance. I think acceptance and then surrender, right? Like, I accept, here's where I'm at. That's 90% of your healing journey. So H is, I call upon a higher power. Whenever you're going through like a deep moment of dark night of the soul, if you're having a moment of anxiety, especially right now, Put your hands in your heart. H. That's what I did with my father yesterday. Like I went back to the backyard, put my hands in my heart. H. I call upon a higher power. Call upon a higher power. I call upon a higher power. A. Awareness. Okay. Aware. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling absolutely depressed, right? Whatever that looks like. And then S. S is for, excuse me, the second day. A is for acceptance. I'm here. This is where I'm at. I'm here. This is where I'm at. And what's the last S? The last S is surrender. Okay, I'm here. This is where I'm at. I surrender it now to you, God. And that's the hardest. Why is it the hardest? Because typically we don't want to surrender. We want to solve it. We want to talk. We want to fix it. We want to get the logical mind in. We want to just go at it completely. And that the whole thing is that if we surrender it to something bigger than us, we can finally get the perspective we need. It's the miracle, right? It's that shift in perception that we actually need to make it happen. So it is a process, and it is in actually my e-guide that you can actually download by going to veronicabarraganiam.com/e-guide, and you can actually download it so that you can get this specific technique to help you, especially during eclipse season. So ladies, big, powerful week. Like I said, this is in one of those weeks you do not want to skip your meditation practice. If you're looking for a specific meditation, remember I just posted this powerful meditation last week, which is here in this next video, on how to actually clear some karma. We're all working through that right now. So this is a really powerful meditation that you all can practice. So make sure you go check it out in this next video below. And also reminder, join me again on Wednesday at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. I'll be going live, but on YouTube. And I will be sharing with you a very powerful meditation to help you with the solar eclipse energy, to help you with the emotional intelligence, so that you can align with your destiny, with your dharma instead of your karma. Because let me tell you, ladies, there's so many people that are just going to be jumping back to the same karmic patterns over and over again. And that's okay. Like, nothing to judge. But if you're not that lady and you're ready to move forward, then join me again on Wednesday so we can actually get it done. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm really liking this new setup with the lives Monday, 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time on Facebook, and on 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time as well over on YouTube. So make sure you get your bell notifications if you're here on Instagram, you're on YouTube, as well as on Facebook, so that you do join me as I do go live. Thank you, ladies, so much for being here. I want to wish you all a very blessed, powerful, life-changing eclipse tomorrow. Remember who you are. Remember you're more than enough. And remember who is always walking within you. God herself, realizing herself through you. I'll catch you next week. Sadhana.